to give the player a single dedicated reference for what button.
Okay, now he's being pretentious. Alright, I must revoke my like to... This is extremely dishonest. Like, extremely dishonest. You cannot pretend in any universe that that's the same writing style. Crobecat doesn't make any strong argument to debunk this, so I can see why this guy would take this dishonest position. Check out Resident Evil 4 is a Crobecat problem by Avalance Reviews. Okay, I actually did get recommended that. Avalanche, isn't he the guy whose channel fell off hard because the August algorithm? No, no, over everybody. I think so.
Well, here's something you don't see me doing very often. To put it mildly, response videos require a skill set fairly well outside of what I normally get up to. So it's rare that a piece of content elicits a strong enough reaction from me and the broader internet to require my frankly worthless input. But I saw some things in Crobecat's latest...
We're not off to a good start. Don't say it's worthless. Put the crown back on, King. Come on. Say your opinion's the only correct one.
Criticism of RE4 Remake that felt like they may need a bit of a counterposition. Especially since I fall into that weird category of person who isn't really all that wild about either the 4th Resident Evil game or its 2023 big budget remake.
Okay, well, I'll be honest. That's not exactly the opinion I wanted to hear. Okay. Alright. Resident Evil 4 is one of the greatest games ever made. Eat shit. Anyway, let's move on.
Instead, the overall point that Crobecat is making by stitching them together in this order. There are people featured here that I know, and creators I watch and enjoy, so unless very obviously stated, this is my disagreement with Crobecat. He's just using other people's words in place of his own.
Thank you. I have to give this a like. Because people, you know, you can say, oh, I was spurging out that I wasn't in the vid, but I know for a fact multiple people referenced in that video don't hate the remake. So he quotes other people out of context for his critiques because he won't give his own narration to his videos, which gives this false conception that everyone featured in the video liked the game less than I did. I was plenty critical in my video. I was excluded for a reason. And you'd have to know to believe otherwise, considering I literally defended Crobecat in a video I released after that review. Okay? Anyway. I just had to get that out again.
The first portion of this video was spent making the point that Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube was a totally original work of heartfelt artistic expression, while RE4 Remake was essentially the opposite of that, where the original... all of the people whose voice clips made it into this section weren't necessarily around for the release of RE4 on the GameCube. They make it seem like Resident Evil 4 was this wholly unique creation standing outside of the era that spawned it, which doesn't even approach being accurate. Third-person horror shooters were something that had been done numerous times before Mikami started, quit, restarted, quit, and re-restarted RE4's development.
Okay, so this is... I already know where this is going. He's going to name a bunch of irrelevant bullshit that none of which was popular at all. I mean, yeah, most of the greatest games ever made were not the first to do what they do. They were just the most popular one to do it. So this is a bad point, I think, starting off. Yes, I don't think... I'm not really like in these communities that discuss this or whatever, but yeah, I mean, I've never said myself that Resident Evil 4 was the first third-person action horror game or whatever. No, it was just the one that did it the best by far at the time, and really for the pretty much ever. But you can debate there's some other games that at least approach the same level of quality that came after it. But is still my favorite of that genre.
Cold Fear released a few months after RE4 and uses almost the exact same setup, so much so that people often feel like a game in development alongside RE4 somehow copied it before anyone could even play it. But even if we do decide to discount the fact that RE4 was, in fact...
I mean, honestly, Cold Fear is a great example where it's like Cold Fear is so much shittier than RE4 that it's unreal. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, I think Cold Fear was decent, but it's like we're comparing a 6.5, maybe 7 out of 10 game to a 10 out of 10. You know what I mean? Like it's like in a vacuum, Cold Fear is fine. It entertained me. It was kind of interesting. Resident Evil 4 like shits all over this fucking game.
So not unique that it released alongside a game that already played almost exactly like it.
That's not true. What the fuck are you talking about? What? Cold Fear and Resident Evil 4 play the same?
When's the last time this motherfuckers played Resident Evil 4?
I know I saw in chat someone was like, you're going to remove that like. I knew in my heart that he was right. Yeah, they play the same because they're both third-person shooters. That's literally where the similarities end. They're horror and they're third-person You do not play these two games the same at all. Like,
not even fucking close.
The entire game is essentially a who's who of popular early 2000s design elements.
I mean, some of that is true, what he just said there. Like, is he going to compare this to, like, God of War or something with the quick time events?
Like, what's one of the first things you think of when someone brings up RE4? QuickTime events, right? That makes sense. They were a massive part of the game's mechanics in terms of volume and even bigger.
Okay. I don't know about that. I mean, yeah, it is a significant part. I don't know. Massive is kind of exaggeration, though. Yes, in boss fights, it is a component of the gameplay, but the QuickTime events, the clips I'm sure he's going to show here are going to be almost every QuickTime event in the game. There's not actually that many across the entire thing. It's just that for boss fights specifically, it is a component of the gameplay, and that's the worst part, really. But for this stuff barely even happens. I mean, it's like a handful of moments like this across 12 hours.
Element and its effect on the people who played and discussed it back in the day. Now, hopefully, I'm not blowing any minds here, but this style of interaction not only predates 4, but was implemented in popular titles long before Biohazard even existed as a series. 80s Laserdisc and Mega CD games like Time Gal, Ninja Hayate, and Road Avenger come to mind as early examples of the practice, but if you're looking for more contemporary ones, there's Die Hard Arcade in 96, obviously Shenmue in 99, basically coining the term, and Sword of the Berserk.
This guy saying he didn't care about any of this in the beginning should say enough. He's not going to be 100% honest. Yeah.
In 2000, and all of these games sold much better in Japan than in the US, which means they would have a much better chance of influencing the Japanese dev staff working on RE4. Outside of that, we have what is undeniably Deus Ex's grid inventory system, the wide open environment.
I mean, yeah, kinda. But I feel like the way RE4 does it is so much more aesthetic.
Environments that were becoming much more standard thanks to open world games like Grand Theft Auto 3. Zooming in over the shoulder to better focus on your target was a massive part of the shooting in Splinter Cell. Using a laser sight as an on-screen aiming reticle was one of the most identifying features of the N64 game Winback, and you definitely can't forget the fact that the game uses tank controls, which is a system well worn not only from its use in the Resident Evil.
I actually don't have a problem with what he's saying, but at the same time, what is the point here? Is he saying that because a game takes elements from other games, it can't be a unique artistic vision? That's a pretty fucking big stretch. That means there hasn't been anything original in the game industry in like 30 years. I don't know. Like, that's a fucking huge stretch, dude. What are you talking about? I mean, yeah, all art is derivative. What is the first fucking cave paintings or the only original art in existence? I don't know. This feels very dishonest to me.
Series proper, but also since its introduction and popularization.
He's saying RE4 was also a product of its time. Yeah, okay. If that's the point he's building toward, that's vaguely true, but also not really. Because, again, you have to think of what were the popular games at the time. When did Resident Evil 4 come out? 2005, I think. Third-person action horror shooter was in no universe representative of the popular games at the time. Those are no fucking... Again, there are vaguely similar, pretty popular games. Like, you know, the Metal Gear games turned more into third-person shooters after the first one. So those came out before this. There's, you know, like GTA, it's third-person shooter. But those are not comparable to this. It's not the same genre. I mean, yes, third-person shooters existed before Resident Evil 4, but as what this package is, all those other games that he named are niche, you know, games that even if they made a little bit of money, were not smash hits. They didn't like move the medium forward or something. Yeah, Max Payne. Max Payne's another good one. Resident Evil is not Max Payne or GTA or Metal Gear Solid 2. It's none of those things. Resident Evil 4 is Resident Evil 4.
Systems like stealth takedowns, attack parries, the weapon selection HUD, and apparently showing a translucent indicator for thrown items.
Yo, it really is The Last of Us. That's wild.
Which I hate to break it to you, but that famously existed in Rockstar's The Warriors, the first game that comes to mind outside of, I don't know, countless other games before The Last of Us.
I'm gonna critique both Krobcat and him at the same time. The genuine critique of Krobcat here is that because he is, and I said this when I watched the video, because he's only using clips of other people, he cannot make a strong, like, I hate to use the word nuance because nuance is a meme word now, but you can't make like a multi-layered argument if you can't find a clip of someone else saying it. You know what I mean? Like, I can't blame Avalanche for attributing certain talking points that weren't brought up in the video because there wasn't really anything in-depth brought in the video. It was basically just, okay, here's a problem with the remake compared to the original. Here's a clip of a guy saying it's a problem. Here's my B-roll of the problem. And then if someone says, well, what about this thing? Unless there's a clip of what about this thing, Krobcat can't even address that complaint in the first place. So, again, like, I think I kind of agree with some of the things Avalance Reviews is bringing up, but it's also not even featured in the video he's critiquing in the first place. So it's kind of like both sides suck. Let me replay the thing. I actually forgot where I was going with this. So let me replay what he just said to remind myself of why I thought of this.
I hate to break it to you, but that famously existed in Rockstar's The Warriors, the first game that comes to mind. Now,
yeah, so the point is, to side with Krobcat, again, Krobcat, even though he didn't explain what he's saying, I think you could infer that what he means is The Last of Us 2 is a bad influence. Like, you can take good elements of good games to make a better game, like what arguably the original Resident Evil 4 did. The remake of Resident Evil 4 took bad elements of modern games that are popular because of normal and put it into the new game. But again, because of the nature of Krobcat's videos, good luck making that argument unless you clip the synthetic god who should have been in the video. He should have been in the video, but he wasn't. That guy wasn't in the video, but I made the argument just now, so.
Outside of, I don't know, countless other games before The Last of Us. I think it's possible some of these people might need a better reference for what video games are than what was released on the PS4 and up. Look, the point I'm trying to make here is not that the original release of Resident Evil 4 was derivative. It's that both it and its remake were cut very much from the cloth of their day. They both equally reflect popular design trends from their respective seats on the gaming timeline.
Again, but the popular is debatable. The games you named that influenced Resident Evil 4 were not popular games, though. So doesn't that kind of defeat the point you just made? And again, this is my point, not Krobcat's point, but the games of 20 years ago were better. So if you take influences from games that were better versus games that are, you know, overrated normie slop, then you're going to probably make a better game, right? So I do agree on some level with the point he's trying to make, that Resident Evil 4 was inspired by other games. That's true. But what you're taking inspiration from is important. But I guess my ultimate point is that this doesn't feel like a response to Crobecat, because Crobecat didn't even make the point that he's arguing with right now. He's kind of... I guess he did with the video title, in the sense that, yes, the modern one is a product of its time. But Resident Evil 4, the original, was not a product of its time. It's the thing that inspired a million things after it. I mean, could you say Half-Life 2 is a product of its time because it has a million elements inspired? You could say, like, the movie game stuff is inspired by Metal Gear, the blah, blah, blah. No. Half-Life 2 is not a product of its time. It inspired movie games after it, is what happened, in a bad way, arguably. Like, you could go back further with Half-Life 1. Half-Life 1, you could say Half-Life 1's inspired by Doom because you shooty things. I don't know. That doesn't mean that it's a product of its time in that sense. Though shooters are popular, so that one's probably not as good of an argument, obviously. You could say Half-Life 1 is because that style of shooter was gaining a lot more popularity at the time. But the point is, you know what the point is. I already said it a million times. Resident Evil 4, the original, was not a product of its time in the same way the new one is, because none of the games that are in the same genre were anywhere near as popular or good, or even just good, as Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 is the thing that inspired the time in the first place. It created a time. Like, even though another good example is Dark Souls, even though Demon Souls, I guess, is really the first one in that, like, exact subgenre. But Dark Souls specifically created a fucking time, you know? Dark Souls can't be a product of its time. It is the time. Resident Evil 4 is the time. So it's not the same argument.
And to hold one as superior to the other in terms of originality or lack thereof is to admit you're either too old to remember just how much of the entire industry playbook made it into RE4 in 2005, or so young that RE4 was legitimately your first time experiencing those elements. To put this in its simplest form, let's look at an analogy. Neil Young's Cinnamon Girl has been covered by a number of bands over the years, and the first one to do it is no more or less original than the last one. Now, is the typo-negative version objectively the best? Obviously, but that's neither here nor there.
¿Qué carajo estás haciendo aquí? ¡Lárgate, cabrón!
This might actually have a good argument in it, because this was never addressed in the video. But the original Resident Evil 4 is much easier than the remake. And the way that certain clips were framed in the Crobecat video would have you believe otherwise. But if you've played the original Resident Evil 4 and you understand how the game is meant to be played, it's very easy.
Sorry to have bothered you.
So this is a kind of running contradiction throughout the entire video, because it features almost back-to-back dueling ideas that knife parries take away the tension of the original's difficulty, and that the remake is way too difficult because you can't get staggers and melee knockdowns off of every single headshot like you could in the original.
Putting that lifeline in place where it's like, oh, we know we can block the chainsaw. We know we can block it, so we're not scared of it anymore. It takes away the tension. Whereas in this, you know you're going down when that chainsaw guy gets close. There's a sense of tension there.
Sometimes shot will stagger, sometimes they don't.
Are you kidding me? Drop the girl.
Yeah, I mean, this is... I'm gonna be honest, like, even though I kind of fundamentally disagreed with this first point, this one, yes. This was the same problem I had watching the video. It's like, yes, you can absolutely, in a vacuum, if we're implying, which would be a lie, if we're implying those 2 points have no relation to each other and he's just saying they're bad independently, that's completely fine. But that's not what Crobecat was doing. We know that's not what he was doing. That's not what he was doing. The video is all a broad, narrative, which is mostly correct, about the Resident Evil 4 remake. right? The problem is this independently, like, these clips don't really say anything. You know what I mean? I don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over again, because I talked about this video too many times already. But he has completely reached the limits of his style, where unless he's just going to straight up plagiarize someone else's entire review, which in some ways he did a little bit of that with this video, how the fuck are you going to make more complex talking points by just simply showing video footage? You can't. You know what I mean?
Dude, I kicked this guy and shot him in the head 4 times, and he's alive. What are you made of?
Furthermore, stuns come in the forms of so much fuckery in this game.
And those aren't the only 2 examples on either side of that just wonderfully contradicting idea, but I think they are the most representative. Now, the knife parries, I do personally feel like made RE4 Remake an incredibly fun playthrough, but if you don't like them, fair enough. I feel like the fact that parries degrade the knife's durability and that major attacks from bosses and mini-bosses take away massive amounts of that durability sort of counterbalances the loss of raw difficulty, but if you'd rather play the original...
Well, the thing is, it isn't a loss of difficulty, though. It is harder than the original one. The original one, if you employ proper positioning, is quite an easy game. The parry... I mean, I'm sure if you get good at the parries, it's probably not that much more difficult than the original RE4, but again, if you add on, like, enemies not being consistently staggered by handgun rounds, I think those 2 elements together definitely just make it harder than the original. If you could stagger an enemy with every shot, then it'd be just as easy, but that hidden stagger gauge element, it's not good difficulty, I'll say that. It's not good, but it does make it harder.
It kind of fucks up your argument. And the wild part is that this video eventually does transition into how the more clunky elements of the original game, like the inability to move while aiming or its narrow FOV, equals out to a more difficult/tense experience.
You cannot move and fire at the same time, nor can you strafe from side to side as you can in a typical shooter. This dynamic has an exceptional way of heightening tension.
The camera system never quite allowing you to keep track of him at all times. Now the edges are sanded off and it's less intense, less memorable.
It's Schrödinger.
I mean, I think he's definitely reading into those lines. Like, especially Gaming Bridge shows specifically, doesn't comment on its difficulty. I mean, the new one could be, which I do remember that fight being somewhat easy as well. I mean, it was, I don't know, I guess I can't say if it's easier or harder than the original, but it definitely wasn't significantly harder than the original. But he was absolutely correct that the remake's boss is less memorable. Absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. Gaming Bridge shows right about that.
And I really hate to get off on a side tangent here, but this is an ongoing issue of the Resident Evil series. For some reason, the go-to explanation for gameplay systems that RE fans would otherwise see as negatives is that they were an intentional element used to amplify horror. Like, if you start looking...
Okay, this doesn't make sense, though. Alright, this now he's coping. RE4 was, you know, the first action one. From RE4 all the way until... you know, they basically soft rebooted the series. They stuck with precision aiming. You know, 4 has precision, 5 has precision, 6 has precision. Even though I don't like 6 as much. That's putting it lightly. Actually, extremely lightly. I hate Resident Evil 6. You know, Revelations 1 and 2 have precision aiming. It was starting with, you know, Resident Evil 2 Remake. They decided... and it kind of worked for that game, where they wanted to dial back the action elements, make the aiming less precise, right? Because it wasn't, they wanted it to be less of an action game, but the problem is it became an action game kind of by the end anyway, so it didn't completely work. And then for some reason, now that they're basically back to being action games again, they decided to fucking, they refuse to just have laser sights on all the guns again. You did it right the first time. Stop being fuck-ups. But no, they gotta do things the new way.
but instead a handcrafted part of RE's approach to horror that was geniusly implemented by its developers, which, I mean, obviously is not true. I'm not trying to shatter anyone's grip on reality here, but tank controls, they predated Resident Evil and were quite literally a stopgap solution to give the player a single dedicated reference for what button.
Okay, now he's being pretentious. All right, I must revoke my like. He's crossed the line into pretentious. I played a really obscure game from 1996 where it's like that doesn't even have anything to do with this argument. It has nothing to do with it. Like we get it. You played a bunch of obscure games that, let's be honest, a lot of them probably sucked. Some of them are probably hidden gems because, you know, there's a lot of old games that are actually pretty good, even if they seem like ass. But some of them were probably shit. Like, it doesn't matter if Resident Evil invented tank controls. The point is, they took that shit and they made it work. Okay? And I'm not even one of those people who has any problem with them getting rid of tank controls. I have a problem with them making slop. You know, that's what I have a problem with. You know, and you could argue getting rid of tank controls is part of what makes it slop, but in my eyes, I just want a good game, and it's undeniable that them, you know, just making a game that feels derivative of every other modern game is bad. And trying to debate that point, I'm in such a complex position when it comes to shit like this, where I think he's made at least a couple decent points, and I had some big issues with the Crobecat video, but this has entered dishonest territory in multiple ways. Like, how can you pretend that you don't care about Resident Evil 4 or the Resident Evil 4 remake while also like dropping a bunch of bullshit? You know what I mean?
Like, do you care or not, motherfucker?
Input would move their character forward when the concept of forward can change on a moment-to-moment basis. Back to the actual point of this video, I am genuinely baffled at the pinball effect of jumping from remake being easier, which makes it worse than the original, but also the lack of gameplay features that made the original so easy, also bad. And look, I'm genuinely not trying to be a dick here, but if you do think that being able to reload while running,
you can reload mid-reposition while angling the camera to keep an eye on the enemy,
or having better control over your camera,
you don't have that whole risk-reward system of having to manage what's creeping up behind you,
or the ability to parry incoming attacks,
all you gotta...
Again, I feel like I want to debate everyone at the same time. I don't know. I don't want to be a dick, because, again, I'm on the side of people who don't like the remake as much, even if I was more positive than I usually am toward it. But I also feel like everyone is playing Resident Evil 4 wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm, like, slightly more speedrunner pilled on that game than the average person, but I just, like, the Electric Underground point about managing, like, things behind you and stuff. Like, if the broader point is about positioning being more important than the remake, that is correct. But at the same time, it's also a game where you can just pause and switch weapons with no delay. You know what I mean? And I love that. I wouldn't change that about Resident Evil 4 at all. You know, again, Dragon's Dogma is a game where you can pause and heal every millisecond, and I love that game as well. But this is a problem where, like, vague language doesn't work as well. That's why, even though sometimes I'll autism ramble about stuff in my gameplay sections, it's because I need to make it clear what my point is, because people misconstrued me too many goddamn times in the past. You know, I guess, again, the God of War Ragnarok review will live on in my brain for the rest of time, but it's not the only one. I've made plenty of videos where people will nitpick little shit that I wasn't clear enough about in my gameplay sections. So it's like, fine, motherfucker. I'll just break it down for you. And then people complain it's too boring. It's like, shit, like, what do you want from me? If the N64 ran on discs, no one would be bitching about tank controls in old RE games as a cop-out to not play old games. Yeah. The guy just stuff he's trying to do to appeal to his ignorant audience screams Reddit shit the max. The thing about this guy is, from what I understand, he is the type of guy who's reviewed a bunch of, like, obscure games and shit. The reason I remember him is because back in August of last year, when I was mega ultra correct by everything, I don't know what's going on. I'm getting tired, guys. I got to end the stream soon. I'm exaggerating, but back in August of last year, when the official story, which I'm still skeptical of certain elements, the official story is that Adblock, or uBlock specifically, updated how it works to get around like YouTube's new system. So the way it was working was making it so when you clicked on a video, it didn't even count it as a view. So everyone's views tanked overnight. You know, in my case, it was about the Season 2 trailer for the Fallout show, right? That was the Spurg thing. So anyway, to tie back into what we're talking about right now, this is one of the guys who I remember reacting to him talking about his channel dying. And the reason, a big part of why his channel was dying was because, I think it was right here. See, he went from 144,000 to only 27,000 views. Everyone's views died at the same time, right? And so, I don't think it was purely ad block. I think there's shit going on YouTube's end too. But just for the whole month of August, everyone's views got sliced significantly. Just feels like this guy's trying to justify his own lack of having a strong opinion on the matter with a bunch of disingenuous bullshit that doesn't even make sense. I hate him. Yeah, a sad thing is there's a couple good points in here, but I don't know. Like at the same time, like I don't know if maybe he has beef with Krobcat for some reason. I have no idea, but I'm not sure I understand what the point of this video is. If you say the point of this video is that the original Resident Evil 4 was also a product of its time, that's not true though. None of the popular games before Resident Evil 4 played like Resident Evil 4. Even if it stole many of its seemingly unique elements from other games, they were never combined all together like that. That's the thing. So that point is just fake. Let's see. I don't know how much longer we'll watch, but I'm not gonna watch any more videos after this.
Introduce pop-up LB to stop every single monster in the game.
Makes the game easy/bad. I'm really not sure how you can square the idea of nailing a single headshot on a slow-moving target, being rewarded with a guaranteed stagger, abusing the world's most forgiving iframes, and dealing damage plus knockdown to more than 6 enemies at the same time isn't similarly detrimental.
Yeah, I mean, he's right about that. I'm pretty sure I made a similar argument. That I do agree with. Absolutely.
And don't get me wrong, I'm on neither side of this argument, because I did find...
Okay, then you wouldn't have made this video.
Motherfucker, don't do this.
Don't do this. That's the Reddit shit. Just stick to a position. Don't say, I don't care. Guys, I don't really care. Then you wouldn't have made this video. You wouldn't have made this video. You do care.
Krobcat puts such wildly contradicting ideas next to each other that I stopped working on this video because I couldn't be sure that this whole thing wasn't a joke. Like right here, you have a few different content creators saying that RE4's limited field of view and camera placement so tight that it doesn't allow for some enemies to remain on screen for the majority of your fight with them is a good thing because of how positively it affects tension.
The camera system never quite allowing you to keep track of him at all times.
But the literal next point, something stated not even a full minute later, is that Leon's new momentum-based movement in the remake is a massive limitation but doesn't contribute to tension for some reason.
Where you're never...
Well, that's because it doesn't, because it feels like shit, though. See? The problem... I know I just said the guy should pick a position. And I do have a position. It's called the synthetic position. As in, I'm always on my own team. Whichever team that is. But I am kind of down the middle here. Where I'm like... Yes. I think this is a dumb point because... the fucking sluggish inertia-based movement feels bad because it takes control away from the player. Like, the controls are objectively less responsive because of this terrible movement. However, on the other side, the only slight thing I'll defend Avalance Reviews is Krobcat didn't actually make a broader point here, just a specific point. So, if anything, he is opening himself up for like a dishonest argument like this because he didn't state his intentions, because he doesn't narrate his own videos, you know? If you just have clips, you can't have, at this point, just AI generate a whole review based on other reviewers' opinions. Whatever, I gotta stop saying stuff like that, but, you know, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I liked most of the points in the video. I liked the point of the video itself, but the actual structure of the video, I did not like for the Krobcat video. Nope.
Quite fully in control of Leon's movement.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, not being able to move the camera the way I want is masterful use of horror, but not being able to move my character the way I want is modern game design bullshit. Of course, don't worry about similar points.
I'm not gonna make the same point twice. Actually, maybe I will. But again, Krobcat doesn't make any strong argument to debunk this. So I can see why this guy would take this dishonest position. Me, Synthetic God, if it was my video, I would have said that, I wouldn't have said the limited tank controls is to amplify horror or any of that shit. I wouldn't have said that. But Resident Evil 4's controls, you might not like the type of controls they are. Like, people hate tank controls. That's a completely fine opinion to have. But they are responsive. When you know how to use them, they function exactly as they should. Inertia-based controls don't. If I flick the stick in the opposite direction and I lose the ability to aim, duck, parry, etc., for a quarter to a half of a second, that's like objectively bad. How is that? In what universe is that good? That does not amplify horror. That amplifies rage. Rage at
the sloppy, unresponsive garbage controls.
I understand that tank controls could also elicit rage, but when you press a button, it does the function instantly. If you understand how to use the controls to your advantage, they work exactly as they should. Yes, there's a learning curve if you've never played a game like that before, but they function perfectly. Okay? That's the difference. That's the difference. But yes, that wasn't explained in Krobcat's video because, I mean, you can't. I mean, how would you in that format? You can't. He could clip what I just said and put it in his next video. That's not gonna happen. Where's the part 3 remake vid? Earlier he said he watched like 20 other videos about Krobcat to understand who he is, so he's being argumentative for the sake of arguing. He's a golem. I know, I really don't understand the point of this video. He's obviously lying about his intentions, about not caring about the argument, because no one would put this much effort in. Like, if he's apathetic towards Resident Evil 4 original and remake, then he wouldn't have made this vid in the first place.
That were made earlier in the video that suggest not being able to move while reloading or shooting was a good thing. On a similar note, Remake Shotgun has less spread.
I don't know why he keeps showing this clip of Resident Evil 6. Well, I guess it is from the video, but every time I see Resident Evil 6, I'm mad.
Which effectively doesn't allow you to easily drop several enemies at once, which is a bad thing, despite the implication being that the original shotgun makes the game more easy, which in this situation equals out to the good kind of easy and not the bad kind the remake is.
Yeah, again, I kind of agree with that point. I do.
And hey, what about Ashley? In OG Resident Evil 4, you had a lot of control over her, something that allowed you to park her in a safe spot and engage a mob of Plagueis-infected bad guys without her becoming a burden on the combat. The remake's approach to this system, though, was that it made the game too easy, which, as we have previously established, is bad. So as you might assume, taking away that granular control and forcing her to be close to you at all times.
Again, don't want to repeat myself too many times, but he's doing exactly what he did with the previous point. Yes, Krobcat did not explicitly state that having objectively bad controls is bad versus difficulty from good game design is good, or a game being easy but being really fun is good and makes up for lack of challenge. He didn't say any of those things because that's not how his videos work, but I think, again, you know, if you're watching and you're engaging with the content, then you can at least assume that not being able to control how Ashley works is bad. You know, even if it doesn't represent a larger narrative effectively, which is the point I agree with, that these individual points don't make sense if put together as a larger point.
So with that being said, my official statement on the matter is that bad things in Remake are bad, and the bad things in the original, also bad. Now please, try not to go out in the sun while nursing the burn you received from that searing hot take.
I really don't like his like Reddit sarcasm in this. That said, though, I mean, that's not really a point either, because it's not like Avalanche brought up what does he think is bad in the original Resident Evil 4. Obviously, Krobcat's video never names any real flaw with the original Resident Evil 4, because again, that's not what his videos do, which I don't have a problem with. I liked his videos for what they were, which is why I wasn't a big fan of the last video, and I also wasn't in it. I don't know if you knew that. Anyway. But what does like the statement actually mean at the end of this segment, that the things that are bad about Resident Evil 4 are bad? No one named anything bad about the original Resident Evil 4. That's kind of the problem, not necessarily that. And I'm not saying it's a flawless game, by the way, to be clear. Even if Resident Evil 4 is in my top 10 favorite games, it does have flaws. It does have flaws. It is not a flawless game. I'm just saying nobody named a flaw.
This is going to be a relatively short section because, as usual, I just can't resist the insanity of the RE4 fan base. A group that has for decades stood firmly on the position that its tongue-in-cheek, purposefully cheesy dialogue was one of its strongest positives.
Okay, he's going to get autistic about this one because he's a Redditor. I don't even know if I want to watch this part because I'm going to get mad. If he can't tell the difference between the campy 80s movie style dialogue and the millennial writing quips, this is extremely dishonest. Like, extremely fucking dishonest. You cannot pretend in any universe that that's the same writing style.
Are you out of your fucking mind?
I don't even know. I think that's probably a good place to stop, actually, because I know that's what he's going to say. We know that's where this is going. We know that's where this is going. Fuck. Yeah, fuck that. I ain't listening to that shit. I ain't listening. I'm not going to dislike, because I feel like there were a few things I agreed with. It's just the format of this, like, just be honest, bro. Just be honest. Just say you don't like the guy. You can even say you don't even care about, like, you don't even like Resident Evil 4 that much or something. But you can't be like, I don't care, dude. I don't care about this, but here's a 39-minute video on why Krobcat is stupid and I don't like it. But I don't care, bro. I don't really care. You do care. You do care. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I care about many things I probably shouldn't. But, you know. More subscribers than me. Oh my god. Well, I'm not punching down then, so you can't complain. He's been doing YouTube forever, though, I think, actually. Which, given the rate of, you know, since my subscriber count basically froze again, who knows? Maybe I'll be this. Yeah, he's been doing this 14 fucking years. Holy shit. So hopefully I overtake him in the next 8 years. What are his most popular vids? Every Stalker game reviewed, 3 hours long, 3.9 million. This is the problem with the YouTube algorithm. Look at his most popular vids. 3 hours. 3 hours, 20 minutes. 3 hours, 28 minutes. 4 hours. 7 hours. And that's a full series Resident Evil retrospective. Is he going to say Resident Evil 4 sucks in here? That's the worst retrospective ever then. You know, he was complaining about his channel dying, but I think the only thing that actually changed is he stopped making multi-hour long vids. So this is what happens with the YouTube algorithm. I mean, shit, it happened with my channel. As you can tell, like, the Saros vid kind of froze in views, and it's because the watch time is not as good as, like, you know, the Outer Worlds 2 vid, or even the High on Life vid. YouTube only cares about watch time. That's it. Well, I guess it also cares if it's like something people are not going to click on, like this fan translation thing. But a lot of these vids are not, you know, none of these are 4 hours long. You got to go back to making 4 hour long videos, then you'll get back in the algorithm. Then again, this is an hour and 14 minutes and it only has 45,000 views. It's possible YouTube has decided his channel should die. But this Crope Cat one, I guess, got a little bit above average.
Stranger than heaven.